you can't really live a meaningful, fulfilling life until you know what it's like to go through challenge and to have life beat you down a little bit. And I live a life right now where if people ask me, what would you change about it? I wouldn't change a thing because I had to go through a lot of tough tests to get to where I am now.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our goal is to empower you to live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, and I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. Together, we'll explore stories of resilience, challenge, and transformation that inspire us to step boldly into our lives. Today, we have a remarkable guest whose journey exemplifies the power of resilience and the importance of facing our challenges head on. John Borden is a passionate advocate for mental health, fitness, and personal growth. After overcoming significant struggles with addiction and mental health, he has emerged as a beacon of hope for so many people. His story is one of transformation, showcasing how a shift in mindset can unlock our true potential. Now, imagine a diamond. To become the brilliant gem it is, it must endure intense pressure and heat deep within the earth. Similarly, John's life's journey has been about navigating the pressures and challenges life has thrown at him. He's transformed his hardships into a source of strength, illustrating that our greatest trials can forge us into something truly magnificent. Just like diamonds, we too can shine brightly if we embrace the challenges we face. John is an author, speaker, and fitness enthusiast who's dedicated his whole entire life to inspiring others through his experiences with mental health and addiction. He's the author of the book, Your Mindset is Your Reality, which chronicles his personal journey and the transformative effects of psilocybin. So I always mess that word up. Psilocybin on mental health. John is also an avid athlete, having participated in ultra marathons and Spartan races, demonstrating his commitment to physical fitness as a tool for personal growth. John's experiences resonate deeply with our theme today as he embodies the very essence of resilience and the importance of stepping outside of one's comfort zone. His story serves as a powerful reminder that facing our challenges can lead to profound personal transformation. So now that we've got you all set, let's turn to our conversation with John, and I'm going to still work on how to say yeah, I'll be back in a bit. Check out this conversation with John. Hey, John, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for making the time to do this. Thanks for being here.
Of course, Audley. It's nice to connect with you, man.
It's a pleasure. I oftentimes talk about how fantastic it is that you get engaged with conversations with individuals that can potentially be life-changing in the lives of others, and so it's really cool to do this, and call it my labor of love, if you will. But yeah, it's something I appreciate, and we spend much time encouraging individuals to sort of get on that best audacious life and get on that train and ride that life that you're supposed to. And as you very well know, there's oftentimes things that will come in our path that will suggest otherwise. And it's our ability to figure a way to get through these challenges or overcome them or get around them in some way. And therein lies the life challenge, right? There's going to be stuff, and it's us being able to get through that. And so maybe as a starting point, John, I'd get you to introduce yourself to our audience and maybe share a little bit about yourself and what's got you to the point that you're on, because you've got a very unique story filled with your own share of challenges.
Most definitely, Audley. And something that you touched on there is that you can't really live a meaningful, fulfilling life until you know what it's like to go through challenge and to have life beat you down a little bit. And I live a life right now where if people ask me, what would you change about it? I wouldn't change a thing because I had to go through a lot of tough tests to get to where I am now. And right now is a pretty good place. I published my book last year entitled Your Mindset is Your Reality, a firsthand account of the positive effects of psilocybin on mental health and addiction. And it really takes the reader through my backstory of, how I, gotten heavily into drinking and cocaine usage, and then how I crawled my way out of it. and now show up for the people in my life in the most genuine, authentic way possible. And do so through health, fitness, and trying to inspire others to go after what really excites them in life. And for me, that's a passion towards health and fitness and really helping other people do the same.
And that's really up our alley here. Let's go after it, right? That's what we're talking about. And um, the challenge of the challenges and what happens is what happens. But one of the things I absolutely love about what you've just said is the significance of our past experiences, right? And the fact that you wouldn't change a thing is I love the fact that you said that, because life is going to give you everything, the good and the bad. Embrace it all, and we may not realize this in the moment, but these challenging things that we're dealing with or going through, they're actually building our resiliency and making us stronger. Well, a tough way to learn a lesson, but it's a reality, right?
Most definitely, man. Diamonds are built from coal under pressure, and when you're going through those times, you just have to imagine that you're a piece of coal that's just getting ready to come out the other side of diamond.
Yeah. And so, I wonder if you could sort of describe some of the mental health challenges, sort of give our audience an understanding of how dire, how serious the situation was.
Yeah, man. So, I'll really back up. I was I was a kid that really had a tough time gaining his footing socially. I grew up in a town where there weren't a lot of other kids my age around, so I always felt like I was behind, learning things later than the other kids in school. Would kind of get made fun of for not knowing,
Hmm.
certain things. I remember one kid laughing at me because I didn't know what a blowjob was in seventh grade. And that kind of followed me all throughout high school, getting, picked on and stuff like that, just really not having the confidence to stand up for myself. Bullying heavily through middle school, high school, everything like that. Now, I did have an experience with psilocybin back when I was 18 that kind of shook me out of that and helped me to stand up to my bully for the first time and really put myself forward. Now, going through college, I, got into lifting, got into working on myself a little bit, was able to become president of my fraternity, and really do a lot of things to make myself more the person that I wanted to be
Hmm.
externally, but
Right.
the internal still wasn't fixed because I was relying on external validation for everything.
Mm.
And my
That's a
first
really
career,
important point, John. Sorry to cut you. That's a
yeah,
significant point. Like, we can do all the things to gloss and make it on the outside look as fabulous as it can be, but if the insides aren't matching, then we're two different directions we're going in.
that's exactly it, man. And it really showed up in my first career out of college. I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which a lot of
Hmm.
people point to as like an excellent managerial training program and everything like that. And it's
Hmm.
something that you get into and you have this character chase of promotion and achievement. And I did that so well. I became a branch manager within 2 years of starting with the company, which is basically like the quickest you could possibly do it. I was the number one ranked branch manager for like half the
Hmm.
months that I was a branch manager. And then I made a stupid mistake of not locking the keys in the safe at the end of the night and assuming that, just because the doors are locked and the alarm's on, that I would be fine. But a couple guys from the neighborhood smashed in the front window with a shovel and made off with a couple cars. And then I got fired from that job a week later, which sent me into a really deep depression because I had tied my whole understanding of myself to this job and the achievement that I was able to get from it and the
Right.
external validation of, my higher ups praising me for the job that I was doing. And then to have that all ripped away, I was basically left with the things that I used for, my own external validation in my own time, which at that time was drinking Coke and chasing girls. And so that sent me into a really deep hole of, just falling down that path, which continued from, 2018 through 2020 when COVID hit, and then I got laid off from the job that I had at that point, which meant a
Right.
whole lot of free time and more drinking, more drugs, more chasing girls. And then eventually moved from New Jersey, where I was born and raised and had all my friends and family, up to Connecticut, where I knew nobody. And doing that during the middle of COVID just put me in this space where all I knew to do with my free time was get fucked up. And I just reached a breaking point where I said, I have no friends in this area. I have no hope really of creating social abundance where I am. And I reached a breaking point where I'm like, okay, I need something different. I need something different.
Right.
And it was still looking for that external validation. It's a job that's going to make me happy. It's the place I live that's going to make me happy. And I had a conversation with a guy at a bar, just random. I sat next to this dude and he was just, radiating a positive energy. And I started talking to him about, my situation in life and the firing and, this girl that I had dated for 5 years, but I wasn't great to her and we broke up and still hadn't like developed any sort of relationship with a girl in the years that had passed since then. And he's like, bro, you're blaming all these other people for why you're not where you want to be.
Right.
Everything's your fault. And at that point, I'm like, fuck this guy. But
Yeah. Yeah.
he's right. I need to
How
start
dare you? Who do
taking,
you think you are? Right.
right? Who do you think you are for blaming me? Oh, wait. Um, so immediately I'm like, okay, well, what can I control? I can control where I live. So I stopped looking for different jobs around Connecticut, knowing that that living situation wasn't going to be right for me. Got to work from home. Did a trip where I flew down to Tampa and then road tripped up through the Carolinas and Georgia, hitting different cities and seeing what I liked. Fell in love with Tampa, moved a couple months later, moved to Tampa, but still the same thing continued, going out, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, day drinking Sunday, blacking out on a weekly basis, just looking for external validation, external validation. And then I was planning on going to, so that whole time I had, I had, diagnosed anxiety. I was taking SSRIs for anxiety. I had depression that I now recognize I wasn't diagnosed as, but I
Hmm.
couldn't feel emotion. I couldn't tap into any empathy with other people in my life. I just had this huge emotional block that was keeping me from showing up as an authentic person to the people around me because I just couldn't tap into my own feelings and the feelings of the people
Right.
around me.
Hmm.
And it really showed up through the story of my brother, which I can get into, a little bit later. But when I tried psilocybin for the first time in October of 2022 as an adult.
And John,
Uh,
just for those that aren't familiar with psilocybin, could you, because
yeah,
what is that?
yeah. So psilocybin is the active chemical in what's commonly referred to as magic mushrooms.
Hmm.
It had been, heavily researched in the 60s once it really came into popular culture for its efficacy in mental health conditions, whether that's anxiety, depression, addiction,
Hmm.
PTSD, so on and so forth. But in 1970, the US government passed the Psychedelics Act of 1970, which outlawed psilocybin, LSD, and a number of other psychedelic compounds, which made them no longer available for research for any sort of positive purposes. They were deemed illegal with no potential positive use, which is
Okay.
ridiculous to someone who had an experience like I did, and to a number of the researchers who are now pouring their life effort into bringing the truth about these substances to the greater masses. But that all got swept under the carpet back in the 70s and didn't really show up again until very recently, where
Hmm.
it started to be researched again. There started to be a great number of podcasts and documentaries devoted to really exposing what the positives are behind these substances.
Hmm.
And, when I had the experience that I mentioned briefly earlier when I was 18, I had what a lot of people would refer to as a bad trip.
Okay.
Um, it was the day after I quit playing baseball, and I was a competitive baseball player through my childhood and teens. But it was the day after I quit playing baseball, and I took, a significant amount of mushrooms, and I saw myself as a 6-year-old version of myself staring back at me in a mirror saying, John, why'd you give up baseball? Why'd you quit? You were supposed to
Mm.
be a baseball player. What happened? And I had to break the news to the 6-year-old version of myself that that wasn't going to be anymore. And so it was just this like really deep emotional
Mm.
experience that I didn't know how to reconcile at that time. So it scared me away from mushrooms for the longest time.
Right.
But I had started to see some of those documentaries and podcasts and all the positive stories coming out, which opened me back up to trying them again when I was planning on going to this 3-day EDM music festival called EDC.
Okay.
And, a friend said, yeah, well, mushrooms are supposed to be fun at festivals. Like, I've got a hookup. You want to try them? I'm like, you know what? Sure. Let's give
Right.
this a shot. So I bought
Hmm.
some in preparation and was like, okay, let me try this out before I go to the festival. We'll see if I like it, see if it's
Hmm.
something that I want to do while I'm there. And I tried a half-gram dose, which the dosing of psilocybin basically scales up from like a tenth of a gram to there's really no limit. The most that
Okay.
I've done at one point is about 5.5 grams. But there's people out there who have done significantly more than that. And at a tenth of a gram to about a third of a gram, you're at your microdose level. A half a gram to about a gram is kind of like a mini dose. A gram to 2 grams is what's kind of like a standard size dose, something where you're not really going to trip, which
Okay.
is what people typically associate with psilocybin mushrooms. But anything more than 2 grams, you start to enter into that trip category. And so the first time that I tried it in adulthood was just a half gram. And I don't know exactly what I was expecting. I was coming home from the bars with a friend on a Sunday afternoon. We're like, yeah, well, we got these. Let's try them out.
Right. Right.
And I ate it, and I was just kind of shooting the shit with my friend. We were talking about, old sports stories and, girls and stuff like that. And a memory came up that I hadn't thought about in years. It
Okay.
was the memory of an old relationship that I had. And when that came to mind, I immediately recognized how much I missed having love in my life. And I felt emotion and I felt love for the first time that I could remember, and truly felt how good it felt to have that love and affection and to care about someone else in that same way. And it just evoked this gigantic wave of tears and emotion that overcame me for hours. And it was like, holy shit, where had that been? It had
Right.
been locked away for so long.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then, I my friend left. He's like, yeah, dude, enjoy the rest of your night. Peace. And I'm like, I can't stop.
You tripped him out.
And and then so, like 2 weeks later, I had the courage to try him again, saying, okay, well, that was an experience. I got really emotional. It's definitely not what I was expecting out of this, but we'll try it again. And so I got home from some bar hopping on a Saturday night and was home at my apartment with my roommate and one of our other friends. And we're like, okay, well, we'd planned on going out to the bars to watch some baseball games, but we were kind of tired. We're still kind of hungover from Friday night. We'll just eat some mushrooms instead. We'll try this out. And so we did, and it was a gram. And at that point, I still didn't understand the dosing really well. And I thought a gram would get me to that point where I would trip and I would feel the full effects of it.
Mhm.
But I didn't. And all I felt was like a nice, comfortable high. Colors were bright, uh,
Mhm.
was more clear. I had a heightened mood. And um, one big thing that comes up with psilocybin is anxiety, especially at the point where it's building within you. And if you're not adept in understanding and controlling your own emotions, it can be a little bit overpowering. And my one friend that was with us was kind of feeling that. So he's like, let's go for a walk outside. I'm like, okay, great. So we walk out of the apartment, we go down to the river walk in Tampa, which is this gorgeous, basically boardwalk that hangs over the river and goes along the length of the Hillsborough River in downtown Tampa. And we walked down to that. And when we got there, I understood natural beauty for the first time in my life. It was like as a kid, my, dad would take us on trips to like Vermont and Maine and all these like mountainous areas with trees and lakes and beautiful views, but I didn't appreciate it. I could never appreciate anything around me. But this night I got down to the river and I saw the moon shining off the water and I saw the
Mhm.
lights from the buildings and just so much life with the people walking along the river walk and families
Right.
and just love. And I just sat there like, oh my God, life is beautiful.
Mm.
Life is absolutely gorgeous. And then it hit me that that was the first time that I'd ever had the ability to be present in my life
Mm.
and to just slow down the noise of like, okay, what are my friends going to think about me standing here looking at the river and taking this in? And I no longer had that, oh my God, what's someone else going to think about me? Or, oh my God, I wish at other points in my life that I had made different decisions. I wish I had gone to a different school. I wish I had, worked a different job. I wish I had done all this different stuff because none of that no longer mattered because I loved where I was right there in that moment, which was in this beautiful city with a great friend group and a job that supported what I needed to do in life and so much opportunity to take me to a different place that I wanted to be. And I was no longer depressed about what had happened to me earlier in life. I was no longer anxious about the future or anxious about what other people thought of me. And I was just finally present for a moment. And it was this like beautiful, oh my God, I can actually slow down and enjoy life.
Hmm.
And we got back to our apartment that night, and there's this like team of drifters, that get these souped up cars and do like donuts and parking lots and stuff. And they like doing it outside our apartment. And the first time that that happened was a few months prior. And I remember being pissed off because it was 2 a.m. on a Saturday night and I was
Right.
trying to watch TV and there's all this noise. I'm like, oh
Yep.
man, like all these guys like,
Yep.
doing this shit. But then we got home that night and that was going on. And I'm like, yo, this is cool as shit. Look at all these cool cars. Like, let's go grab a joint and go watch this. This is awesome. And it's just this major perspective shift that followed me through the weeks and days that followed, where I could just, go out to the grocery store and talk to the cashier and have a
Mm.
genuine conversation or like strike up a conversation with someone in an elevator or, just around the gym or whatever without feeling like there's any sort of expectation that I need to adhere to. And I just started approaching life differently, whether that's going out to a bar and not feeling the need to order a drink impulsively just because I'm at a bar, just because I'm hanging out with friends. And it was this like magical couple weeks where I didn't really quite understand what had happened at that point. But I just knew that I was happier and living life in a much different way than I had been for the 29 years that had preceded me up until that point. And I was driving in my car one day, I was stopped at a stoplight and I pulled up Instagram to, check to see if I had any notifications or whatever.
Hmm.
And the first post that popped up said, single dose. New study finds that synthetic psilocybin cured depression in 90% of participants. And I'm like, holy shit,
Mm.
that's what happened. I must have been depressed my whole life before, but now I'm present. I can feel emotion. I'm happy. I'm connected to the people around me. I'm calling friends just to talk and like
Yep.
going out and enjoying nature. This is the most incredible thing ever. And so that really got me comfortable with like, okay, psilocybin has this ability to really unlock positives for you. Let's continue down this road and see what else there is.
Right.
And so a week after that experience, uh, I was getting prepared to go out to a Halloween party with some of my friends, and my typical routine was, start drinking around 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're going to be
Right.
going out at 10, 11, do lines the whole time, yada, yada, yada. And so we were having a big pre-party for the Halloween party that we were going to go to. I
Yep.
had probably 15, 20 people over my apartment. I'm offering drinks. I have a tray full of Coke that I passed out and I'm handing around to people. And I do a line of Coke and I hand it to the next person. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And my friend, who had been my friend for 10 years, like from college and moved down to Florida shortly after I did, is like sitting there next to me. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't like Coke. Like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the way that it fucks up my sleep. I don't know like
Right.
what it does to my health. I don't like the narcissistic asshole that I become when I'm on it. I don't like this. What am I doing? And so I just never did Coke again after that.
Mm.
And it was an
Mm.
every week, like I was going through an 8 ball a week, 3.5 grams of coke a week, from the time that I moved down to Tampa until that point, which was over 6 months, and it had been 10 years of doing it pretty much every week. And from that
It's
point
a lot.
forward, I was just like, I don't like this. Like, why would I do this to myself? I'm not doing this. Um, and then I had one more experience prior to going to the music festival, which was my first time tripping. And um, you know, that during that experience, I I I ate probably a little bit more than 2 grams of mushrooms off a dare. We were playing Mario Kart, and again, I'm a stupid asshole. And I
Hmm.
lost the game. I accepted the dare, so I ate, the biggest mushroom in the bag. And at first, it was like, okay, this is great because I can be more in tune with my friends. I'm like able to read body language better. I'm able to understand the emotion of the people in my friend group more.
Hmm.
And then everybody left. And I'm just starting to peak now alone in my dark apartment and left alone with my thoughts. And I had the ability to close my eyes and I was transported up into a different view of myself where I was looking
Hmm.
down at myself and I saw John in the middle and a spider chart of me and everybody I've met in my entire life attached to
Okay.
me through webbing. And I could see energy pulsing through myself and every other person that I've ever met, which was indicative of the connection that we had. And so, like, the connections to me and my family members were thick, strong webbing with energy
Hmm.
pulsing throughout. The connections to friends, indicative of how long we had known each other and how deep the connection was. You could see the energy and the strength of the webs pulsing throughout. And then I saw the webbing that connected me to the ex-girlfriend that I had mentioned before during the half-gram experience. And I noticed that there was a connection and there was energy coming from my end, but not from the other end. And it reminded me about how I had reached out after I had that half-gram experience just to say, like, hey, you know, I know that, I know that we ended on a bad foot, but I would still like to maintain a friendship. Like, let me know if that's still something you're interested in. And she had blocked me. And at that point, I saw the webbing, I saw the energy, and I saw none coming from her end. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to stop putting energy into this.
Right.
And at that point, I finally internalized all the emotion from that relationship and all the pain that I had caused her because I
Hmm.
saw that, like, even 3 years after the end of the relationship, even just a friendly reach out wasn't accepted. And that caused me to look at myself and the pain that I had caused in that relationship through cheating, lying, gaslighting, so on and so forth, and just say, you know what? I was a bad person. I was a bad person at that point in my life, but all I can do is choose to be a better person from this point
Hmm.
forward. And so it was this emotionally just distressing experience where I sat on my couch alone for an hour before calling all my friends and being like, guys, somebody please come here. I need someone to just give me a hug right now. I'm so
Hmm.
emotionally void at this point. Um, but then from that point forward, it was like this freedom that I never felt the shackles of the weight of those
Yeah.
decisions ever again. And I could finally move past it. And then had 3 more experiences, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the next weekend at EDC that, one realization after the other that just led to me coming home from that trip and saying, oh my God, I'm a completely different person
Right.
from where I was a month ago. And the only thing that changed is how I thought about the things that happened to me
That
early
powerful?
in life. Ain't it, man?
It's,
I,
like, think about that for a second. Like that statement that you just made, it is extremely powerful. You change a whole different, and the only thing that happened was up here. You didn't physically
yep.
become someone different. You didn't go to a new environment or place. There wasn't anyone that was brought in to tell you. It happened in your mind, which really says that change could have happened at any point in your life. The transformation you experienced at the time that you did, but sometimes the time when we change is when we're supposed to change, and that's what sounds like it happened for you.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that got me to the title of the book, Your Mindset is Your Reality, because it was just this realization that, like you said, there's no physical change. There's nothing that actually changed. The only thing that changed is how I perceived what had happened to me earlier in life. And I no longer felt the weight of those decisions. I felt
Hmm.
free because I just loved where I was in life. And I loved my ability to be able to dictate how I perceived my life based off how I chose to think about it.
Right.
And so I shot my mom a text the final day at EDC, your mindset is your reality. I love you. And that became the title of the book. And it's just something where I just felt so inspired by the experience that I had and the enlightened realizations that I was able to achieve, that I wanted to share it with other people in the hope that it could inspire others to just think about their life differently and maybe take a chance on something like psilocybin to see if they can get to a similar point of acceptance and love for themselves.
Mm. Powerful story, John. I appreciate you sharing in depth the manner in which you did. So many wonderful themes I heard you touch on. Being present, mindfulness is a great one, for example, and allowing you to see the things around you for what they truly are. And when you're able to get to that point, you really understand where things place in your lives. And why that's also an interesting process to go through is we sometimes put a level of importance on things that really aren't as important as we think they are. And so when you have that opportunity to see the full picture, you understand this thing I've been investing into, this thing that I have poured my time, energy, resources, whatever, it wasn't where it should have been. And so I think that process of going through that realization is a very, very important one for people to do. And so again, thank you for sharing that. Now you now test yourself physically through ultra marathons, and I wonder how you can sort of describe, sort of, maybe, is that something you just got into, and then kind of how has it helped your sort of, I guess, the mental and emotional well-being overall?
Yeah, man. So, the story of how I got into challenging myself physically, I had always been somebody that looked to challenge myself, but
Hmm.
in my teens and 20s, in my teens, it was baseball and everything that I did was aimed towards getting better at baseball. But then once my baseball career ended, I went to college and I got heavily into powerlifting because I wanted to
Hmm.
put on weight. I had entered college at 130 pounds soaking wet and, really wanted to just have better luck with the girls. There's that external validation thing again, right? And so I started to get heavily into powerlifting and, it was excellent as far as, my strength compared to my body size and everything like that. But when I had my realization with mushrooms, it showed me, oh my God, you've been doing all this. But one, you're not gonna get any better. I hadn't hit any PRs in 2 years at that point. I basically maxed out the ability of myself to put on strength. So it's like I could either, start doing steroids and bump that strength up, or I could try to make myself healthier in other ways. And so I
Hmm.
started to get more into yoga and stretching and just understanding the way that my body moved and operated. And then one of the biggest changes that came with my psilocybin experience was just recognizing the things that I needed to take action on in my life. And one of those was that I had a bike that had a flat tire and it had had a flat tire for years. All I needed to
Hmm.
do was get it to a shop and get a new tube in it, and then I'd have a new bike to be able to ride. But I didn't do that for years and years until I had this experience with psilocybin and I brought it to a shop and got it fixed. And now all of a sudden I'm biking all over the city rather than
Right.
driving or walking or whatever. And it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. So, short rides to the gym or to the grocery store turned into, you know, 3, 4, 5, 10 mile rides.
Hmm.
Um, but I hadn't gotten into running or anything like that. So basically all of 2023, I was going on bike rides and I was doing that. But I wasn't really deciding to challenge myself physically. I was just kind of going through the motions, lifting,
Right.
but not really pushing towards PRs or not really following any sort of goals. And then in November of 2023, I had been trying to organize a few of my friends to do a Spartan race. Are you familiar with those?
Spartan race. No.
Yeah. So,
No.
they're obstacle course races that are a defined length, but also they have somewhere between 15 and 30 obstacles during the middle of
Okay.
them. And so the race that we were going to sign up for either had 5K, 10K, or half marathon options. And while trying to organize with my friends, I'm like, oh yeah, guys, let's do this. I would like to do, probably either the 5K or the 10K. I haven't ran in 10 years, but I'm willing to go give it a shot.
Hmm.
And they're like, like, yeah, let's sign up. The one's like, if we're going to do it, let's do the half marathon. But 2 weeks before the race, I'm like, guys, you signing up? Guys, you signing up? And it was clear to me that they weren't signing up. And at that point, I had just started listening to David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. Are you
Mm.
familiar with David Goggins?
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, he's the ultra marathon runner dude. Like he's really intense and yeah, no, very familiar with him at all. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so his story, he was beaten as a kid, lived through
Hmm.
poverty, was behind in school, bad grades,
Yep.
was really doing nothing with his life. And then he just decided to say, you know what, fuck this. My life's in my hands.
Right.
I need to do what I needed to do. And so he lost 100 pounds in 3 months to even have a chance to make the Navy SEALs, went through SEAL training 3 times before deciding, hey, look, no matter what my injury is, I'm not going to stop. So he had broken shins, but made it through SEAL training. And then, like you said, got into ultra marathon running and set the world pull-up record and does all this crazy shit. And listening to him speak and understanding the circumstances that he had, I said to myself, you know what? Whatever excuses that I have for myself are bullshit. I'm going to
Right.
sign up for this half marathon one. I'm going to go do it. It doesn't matter that I haven't trained. It doesn't matter that I'm, not ready for it. There's
Hmm.
people out there that do this. There's no reason that I can't do this.
Right.
So I signed up with basically zero training. I went and did the race and finished in the top 5%. And I'm like, holy shit, man, I'm so much stronger than I gave myself credit for.
Mm.
So it just started this like challenge yourself, go for what really excites you kind of thing. And so that turned into, doing a couple more Spartan races, doing a triathlon the next spring, and then, kind of going throughout the summer, uh, doing long runs, lifting, trying to increase my overall physicality. Um, and just trying to find different ways to challenge myself that seemed exciting. And I went out to Colorado for a family reunion and had the opportunity to scale Pikes Peak, which is a 14,000 foot mountain. And went out there, flew in Wednesday, went out to the mountain Thursday. I tried to make it to the top and then recognized my own limitations in that I hadn't adjusted to the altitude, and the altitude was going to kill me because of lack of oxygen if I didn't
Okay.
get off the mountain at the halfway point rather than making it all the way to the top. So I realized, through that experience that I reached a breaking point and, found what that stopping point is. And I'm like, okay, we've tested ourselves. We've gotten ourselves to that extreme of like, okay, I
Hmm.
might die. So the next week, my friend called me on a Tuesday and was like, hey man, I just signed up for this race on Saturday. You want to do it with me? I'm like, what kind of race? He's like, it's an ultra marathon. I'm like, okay, how long? He goes, 46 miles. I'm like, you motherfucker, you're doing this? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'm in.
Right. Right. Right.
So, China just showed up on race day and was like, okay, this is 3 times plus the length of anything I've ever run before.
Sure.
But we're gonna go for it. We're gonna see what happens. And it became this huge mental battle of me versus my body and my body telling me, stop, stop, stop. From the time that I reached mile 30 until the time I finished at mile 36, I was just in excruciating pain
Hmm.
through my legs, my hips, my feet, everything. But just kept the legs moving, kept the legs moving, kept the legs moving, and finished 11 hours and 50 minutes after I started.
Wow.
And it just proves to you, you know, whatever you think your limitations are, it's just bullshit story that you're telling yourself.
Hmm.
Just go out there and do it. And so, I've continued to just try to find ways to challenge myself. During the month of February, I did a strongman competition on February 1st, which I
Hmm.
won the Spirit of Strength Award, which is given to me for being what I'll define as the most fiery competitor in the field. Then the week after that, I ran a marathon. The week after that, I did this competition called DecaFit, which
Hmm.
is a Spartan branded competition that's high intensity interval training. And right now, I'm training for another strongman competition that's in less than a month. And at the end of the year in November, I have a 200-mile race on the board. So we're going to be training heavily for that through the summer and putting our foot on the start line and not stopping until we make it through the 200 miles.
I love it. No, I do. I love it. The idea of challenging yourself and really pushing. Because again, you can speculate and surmise and come to your own conclusions about what you can or can't do, but until you actually try it, you'll never truly know. And so even within within the context of this podcast, we talk about being audacious. That's is really what that sums it up very much. So we're bold enough. We've got the courage. We're courageous enough to step forward and do that thing we have no idea where it'll end up. And so that clearly, I'm hearing that loud and clear from you, which is amazing. I'm wondering, and again, John, I've absolutely loved the story and the insights and the lessons that you share from your own personal life. I'm wondering how can others sort of navigate their own journeys towards getting to that true authentic self version of themselves, because I think that's when I like to think for us as individuals, that's kind of the ultimate goal here. And again, based on your stories and dealing with what you've dealt with and learning what you've learned and coming to the conclusion that you've come to, it sounds like you're there, or at least on the path again there.
Yeah, man. I like to think that I am. What I share with people is really, just what I shared in that last bit is that we really don't know how strong we are until we're willing to test ourselves. And the thing that
Mm,
limits so many people in life is, anxiety, unsureness of oneself, and the limiting beliefs that we place on ourselves. A lot of times when we're feeling anxiety, it's because we know what the choice we need to make is, but there's something that's keeping us from making that choice. And so when we experience this, oh my God, there's something that I want to go for, but I don't know about it. I don't know, I don't want to just take that first step. Just take that fucking first step. Just go for something that excites you. And whatever that is, whether that's physically, whether that's in business, whether that's in, your romantic life, maybe approaching that girl that you might see at the gym or the bar or walking down the street on a regular basis. Go for what excites you. Because if not, there's always going to be this what if I challenge myself? And nobody ever goes to the grave saying, damn, I wish I hadn't run that race. I wish I hadn't gone on that vacation. I wish I hadn't approached that girl. It's always the things that you wish you had done that are going to be the things that stay with you long term. And don't give yourself that opportunity. Just go for it.
mm. Yeah, staying out of that world of the what ifs and the regrets, and give yourself a chance. And I oftentimes, I think for a lot of people, failure is a big thing, right? And that failing, and what if I don't do it? What if I fail? What if I'm not successful? And I oftentimes respond back, okay, so if you're not successful, now you learn how to do it the right way, right? That's kind of how
Hmm.
I see it, or learn how to do it a better way, and why not try again? And you clearly, I think those are some you never really know until you know, and you don't really know until you try. And that's the simplest way I can put it.
That's it, man.
John, this has been really, really insightful conversation. I really appreciate again the manner in which you shared and is open. So thank you for that. For listeners that want to learn more about you, or connect with you directly, where can we send them?
Yeah, man. So the best way to get in contact with me is through my Instagram. I'm at Johnny B. That's JohnnieBe on Instagram. I'm also on X Twitter at Psilocybin Fit, Psilocybinfit. And you can find my book on Amazon. It's titled Your Mindset is Your Reality, a
Hmm.
firsthand account of the positive effects of psilocybin on mental health and addiction. And it's got this purple cover, so you'll see it
There you go.
standing out right there. Your Mindset's Your Reality. It's on Amazon, and I'm finishing up the audiobook right now, so hopefully that'll be available in a short time.
Well, very, very cool. Well, we will ensure that the appropriate contact details are in the show notes below. Again, John, thank you so much for this. Congratulations on a wonderful journey, and thank you for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast. Back, we are here on the podcast, and during our conversation, John emphasized a pivotal truth. If you don't know how strong you are until you test yourself, and that's so, so, so true. This resonated with me because it highlights the necessity of pushing beyond our perceived limits and embracing discomfort as a pathway to growth. John's journey illustrates that by confronting our fears and challenges, we can uncover layers of strength and resilience we never knew existed. I personally loved how candidly he shared his struggles and how he turned those experiences into fuel for his personal evolution. It really is a powerful message that speaks to everyone, regardless of where they are on their journey. I encourage you to connect with John directly to learn more about his pathway and insights. You can find him on Instagram at Johnny B, and then of course on X, formerly Twitter, is Psilocybin Fit. I got it. Yeah. Psilocybin Fit. Additionally, you can find his book, Your Mindset is Your Reality, on Amazon, which I highly recommend. John has actually he wrapped up an audiobook version of his book, so keep an eye out for that as well. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, or share if you haven't already done so with family and friends. Your support helps us grow and reach even more people who are ready to live their best audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.